We're heading underwater today to look at waves and wave action and what that does to bass fishing. Well, bass anglers talk about wind all the time, and we know it gets the food chain going, but we rarely get to see what the results of the waves are. And this next one is really important. We are going to also discuss how wave action can disrupt certain forms of cover and do the exact opposite of what we think is happening or should be happening. And yes, you will get to see it underwater as well. Well, in the latest issue of Bassmaster, which was great timing, there's an article called Quick Change Artists. It is all about the adjustments that need to be made from one day to the next. Well, one section deals with wind and waves. Jordan Lee, an Elite Series angler, says, "The biggest thing I practice for is wind." He goes on to explain, when I know wind is likely, I probably spend more time studying how the wind might help me rather than hurt me. And then he breaks down, it stirs up forage, and of course how the rest of the food chain then follows. But we need to know how that food chain is impacted. Plankton, or specifically phytoplankton, are plants that use photosynthesis to create their own food. Then we have zooplankton, which we talk about here on the channel all the time, which are microscopic animals that feed on the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton that is along the surface or the upper part of the water column is susceptible to the wave action and where the waves push it, and naturally everything else responds. We can see here in this footage how wave action creates a nutrient-rich environment. Besides all the particles we cannot see because they are so small, there are thousands of other things being batted around by the wave action. Just look at it in the water column and the fish respond. There is life all over where the waves are pushing across this point. But depending on the strength of the wind, we need to know what areas or waters are going to be affected the most, or even some waters that are affected too much. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's first open my deep dive app and look at the wave action. This here is Percy Priest Lake in Tennessee, one of my favorites. I'm going to check the wave action on this new feature for tomorrow, or what is forecasted. As we can see here, the wind is expected to be from the southeast. Now, the red wave icons show where the waves are going to be hitting the shore the strongest. And in fact, this area right here, look at it, has a long running start for the waves to really get some momentum going. The wind through here is unimpeded, intensifying where these waves are hitting the shoreline. We're right on the other side of this point. The forecast is for the wave intensity to be a little less. Now, this is a great spot to check because it is predicted I will have two very different wave intensities right near each other. And that gives me the chance as an angler to see which is the better spot and where the food chain may be kicked into high gear. But here's something we also need to consider. Wave action can have the opposite effect, and I find this super interesting. Well, in that same Bassmaster article, Kyle Welcher explains wind can hurt you. If it shakes the cover, you might be fishing, such as lily pads or reeds. Well, I actually ran across this last summer. I was fishing a funnel. The waves were pounding through it. At first I was casting up into the pads, but I could not get bit at all. And I was like, man, everything seems to be perfect. There's lots of wave action through here. It's a funnel, it's a pinch down, but no bites. Then I backed off and fished just outside the pads and instantly started catching bass. But look at this. So I dropped the camera underwater. There was a lot of bass fry in here, but I want you to look at the pad stems specifically. They are shaking all over the place. Everywhere I looked with the camera, the pad stems were bouncing around and the bass were hanging out just outside of the pad field. Well, that is exactly what the article was talking about. Waves against soft cover can cause problems. Knowing the cover on your lake and the intensity of the wave action coming in can give you a good idea of how to fish and where to fish before you ever get there. Thank you to the Deep Dive app for sponsoring this video. You can check them out on the Google Play Store, the Apple Store, or follow the link down below. And hey, if you want to watch a video that it's just me asking a question about something that I want to know, the types of videos you want to see, because I've really invested in an ultra slow motion type of a camera system, and I really want to get your feedback on what are things that would be interesting or helpful to you as a bass angler. And hey, make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You just never know how you might change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.